All right, hello everybody. How you doing? Okay, so before I get into my slides, I think probably most of you, have you used eMusic before? Show of hands. Got a couple in here. Okay, also, is everybody here a developer, a blogger? If you're a developer, raise your hand. All right, cool. If you're a blogger, okay, then who's here that's just interested in WordPress and doesn't have a lot of technical background? I'll talk to you. Okay. Yeah, so I'm Scott Taylor. I've been at eMusic for about 5 years, and we've been doing WordPress for about 2 years. And we had the same issue I think a lot of, I wouldn't say we're a huge company, but enterprise sites have when they get a piece of software, or they've had a piece of software for a long time. They grow dissatisfied because they want to do newest, latest, fastest, best, and you're kind of stuck with a system you inherited. And so about 2 years ago, we kind of set up on a path to do a new architecture for our website. Our website had been kind of Java, top to bottom. Not open source, not PHP, not the benefits you get of that, which are usually a faster development cycle, slicker tools, and quicker to market with the products you want to make. So we kind of agreed that PHP was going to be a good idea, and then we wanted to turn our Java monolithic architecture into web services. Does everybody know what web services are? Yeah. A web service, all you really need to know is that you call a URL and you get data back and you do something with it. So YouTube is a web service, Foursquare, Twitter. If you use their feeds to build anything, widgets, sidebars, anything, it's a web service. For us, that means taking a lot of our data, which is mainly for us catalog data. I have an album, I have an artist, I have whatever. Taking that data and using that, WordPress or PHP, calling that, and then building our apps with that. When you use a service like that, you can have a unified backend for any number of apps, meaning the website is an app, a mobile phone app is an app, an iPhone app is just an app that can use that service. That's where you get your data, and then what you do with it is kind of up to you and your design team. So real quick, I just want to show you eMusic, for those of you who've never seen it. And in my slides, what I'm going to do is kind of reveal to you where WordPress is in here. Because when you look at it, there may be some aspects you might say, oh, that could possibly be a WordPress type thing. But it's not immediately obvious how we're using WordPress and how powerful WordPress is kind of behind the scenes here. So this is our homepage, and I'll scroll down so we can see what's happening. Oops. So the first thing you're going to notice is on the right we do have a sidebar, which in some WordPress themes you may have a sidebar. But what you'll notice is that there's a lot of music, and there's a lot of different ways we're showing music. At the top is kind of where we're merchandising a little bit. We're showing some featured things. And then below it we have new and noteworthy albums. We have some featured editorial, we have recommended albums, and then we have albums that we call editor's picks. And we'll get into this more later, but a lot of this data doesn't exist in a feed from a web service. It's actually something our editors have to curate. And since we're using WordPress, WordPress is going to be that curation tool. Up at the top, we have what we call a stage, and we have program items in it. And that's something our editors have to curate. And that's something you're going to see when I show you the tools we use. Okay, so then, on a music site, you're definitely going to have artists. So here's Radiohead, and this is Radiohead's artist page. Okay. And all these pages I'll foreshadow, are a mixture of WordPress, stuff actually coming from WordPress, and data from all these different services. You don't really have to know how they work, just know that a service is going to give me some sort of data. Right here, when we have albums, that's going to be Radiohead's discography. So from somewhere, I can say, give me Radiohead's discography, and I can put it in right here, make it look pretty. Okay, then we're going to have an album page. Here's Justin Timberlake, my man. And mixed in here, we have, an eMusic review. On the right here, we have eMusic features, which are posts. We have a Twitter feed, and then we have some recommended albums. Another aspect of our site, kind of the cornerstone of like, how do you look at all the music we have on eMusic? And there's a couple ways you really drill down into that content. Right here we have browse. We call this browse. And for WordPress and creating posts, you're going to have WordPress search. But when we have a bunch of foreign objects, meaning all these albums somewhere, we're going to get them from this service. And we've actually used Elasticsearch. I'm not sure if anybody is familiar with Elasticsearch. It's an enterprise tool for searching that we use for search and browse. This is the browse portion, meaning I'm going to say, I'm on page 1, show me the most popular, starting in reverse order. I can page through these. And on the left, I can filter. And then search is going to partly use what WordPress does. You probably can't see the URL, but if you see it says $s equals, that is what WordPress does for search, and we are still using the WordPress ability to search through your editorial and articles, and we'll surface those down here at the bottom. But the rest of the stuff on the page is going to come from Elasticsearch, and so we're using WordPress data, and we're using data from this service. And then, this will come up later in our slides. I want to make sure you guys have seen these in action before I show you slides that have stickies and pointers and more data on them. But this is our genre page. Another way we drill down through content is rather than taking everything and trying to put it on a page, we now are subdividing by genre. And here's alternative punk. And so, similar to the home page, which is going to be curated by our editorial team, we can now also curate by genre, and I'll explain how we do that in the slides. Which, let's go ahead and fire those up. Actually, during the last set of questions, a lot of people were asking specifically about audio and video, or maybe just audio, or maybe just video. But I've been working kind of on the WordPress core dev team for about a year now, and in the next release, which is 3.6, which is going to come out in the end of April, WordPress now has native support for audio and video, which it hasn't had. It's been deceptive that it has supported it to an extent, because you've been able in the past to paste a YouTube URL on a line by itself in your content, and when you publish that content, a YouTube video will appear in your page. That to me was never audio and video support. That's called an embed support. And so, in, I guess, the end of October, I was invited to go to the WordPress Community Summit in Tybee Island. And while I was there, Matt Mullenweg was doing a question and answer session about WordPress. People could ask about what's the future of WordPress, what's in store. And the question I asked him was, because he was actually asking us questions like, every release, we've talked about how WordPress has gotten faster or the admin has gotten better. And then he put a chart on the screen that showed the admin's actually slower over like the past 4 releases, something like that. So I asked him, I said, if I'm, just a random guy and I want to make a cool website, why would I pick WordPress over Tumblr? And not a lot of people had a great answer for that. And the reason I asked it is because, I'm a musician. The first thing I think about is audio and video. If I go to Tumblr, I can upload an MP3, there's a player, it's stupid easy. What's the advantage for WordPress for people who want to do that? And nobody gave me a great answer, and so In WordPress 3.6, we're tackling what are called post formats, which is kind of what Tumblr does. When you go to write a post, you can say, this is a status, this is a quote, this is a gallery, this is audio, this is video. And so I went ahead and wrote the code for audio and video. So this was committed while I was in Mexico in the middle of the night, right? But this is audio and video landing in WordPress, which was a huge deal for me. And if any of you know what trunk is and you're running WordPress trunk, it's in there. We're still adding code by the day. But when WordPress 3.6 launches at the end of April, there are going to be a lot of really cool things you can do with audio and video. And I think the liberation is that if you have an MP3, you're kind of stuck with just figuring out how to make it work in WordPress, writing your own code, installing somebody else's plugin. It's not stupid easy. And now it's going to be stupid easy, which is I'm very excited about. Okay. And then just so I can brag a little bit, last release of WordPress, I was actually named a recent rock star. I got very, once you start contributing to WordPress core and your code starts getting committed, it gets very addictive. So I spent a lot of time and I was honored to be named this. But for 3.6 though, I don't care about being recognized. The audio video thing was important to me. And I think moving forward, it's going to be improved and it's going to give people the ability, like they've never had with WordPress, to easily take audio and video and display it on their blog. So for everybody that was asking, how do you take your own audio and make it happen, soon. Okay. So, me open this. Okay.
Hey, Scott?
Yep.
Is that HTML5? Then is it like,
well, so what,
yeah, is it all Word browser?
No, so what it does, I'm actually piggybacking on top of a library called Media Element.
Yes, that's all those called.
Yeah, Media Element will basically figure out for you if your browser supports JavaScript, which in this day and age, basically everybody does. If you don't have JavaScript enabled, it'll fall back to a link. But if you do, it makes like Windows Media work in Chrome. It makes OGG work everywhere. Yeah, it's actually really awesome. But yes, when HTML5 is enabled, when your browser supports it, it uses HTML5.
Right, you wouldn't have, like if you had an audio clip, you would only have, all you had is an MP3, you could just load up. MP3, right. You don't have to upload like all those. Well,
so what it does is, if you have an MP3 and your browser doesn't play MP3, but you have Flash installed, it'll use Flash to play it. Same with sound files, like a Windows Media file. If you have Silverlight installed, it'll work everywhere. The only incompatibilities are if you don't have Flash, don't have Silverlight, and you want to use Windows Media on Chrome or something. Okay.
What about QuickTime?
QuickTime.
So many people are still using that as a legacy.
Yeah.
Major sites and they're running QuickTime.
Yeah, .mov files. Maybe. I know .mp4 and .m4v I have working. Possible. I think it actually only may be a MIME type problem in the code. It'll probably work.
If you email a video file from an iOS device, it will be an MOV file.
Okay.
So.
Good to know. And the thing is too is some of this code just landed, and like what happens, especially with new code, is you get really excited, and then a tidal wave of edge cases come in, and we'll hit as much of them as we can. WordPress is 17% of the internet, and we'd be shocked just what people come up with. So we'll hit as much of that as possible. But my name on Twitter is WonderboyMusic, if anybody wants to follow me. Same on Track, if anybody's on WordPress Track, I use the same name. My blog is scotty-t.com, and if you go there, it's just modified 2011, and there's a WordPress tab at the top. I have a ton of blog posts I've written about similar stuff that I'm going to talk about tonight. If you want to check that out or dive deeper into any of these crazy WordPress.
What's the URL of your blog?
Scotty-t.com. There. Be cool. All right. Okay, so we're going to go quickly through this. unless somebody begs me to stop and say more about it, but this is kind of a one-pager about our architecture. A lot of people will ask what plugins we use, and we actually don't use a lot of plugins straight out of the plugin repository, just for various reasons. But we do use a lot of the plugins that Automatic has written for high scalability, and Backcache and HyperDB are two of those. If you don't know what memcached is and you don't know what a MySQL cluster is, don't worry about it. If eventually you are running a high-powered WordPress site, or you're working at a company that has a site that's on multiple servers, this stuff will come up. You can watch the slides again. Yeah. But we do use a paid plugin called Gravity Forms for our support site, which I fall in and out of love with as time goes. It's very easy to create forms with it. I'm not totally in love with the code that comes out of it and the way it loads JavaScript and stuff. But if you need to create a bunch of contact forms that are supposed to get emailed to somebody when they're done, and it'll save the data, you can go back and check and see the number of replies, and follow up with people. It's pretty good. You know, we've been doing our migration to WordPress for really about 2 years now, and a couple of the last bastions are our message boards and our profile section. And just based on other project priorities, these haven't been pushed out yet. We're very close to be using BBPress for message boards, and BuddyPress for our profile section, which will kind of be the basis of our identity and profile for the website. I've written a lot of this code. It just isn't on the roadmap immediately, but soon. Okay, and then for a visual look at this, if this makes sense to anybody, that's our website right there. But basically, all this is an enterprise level site. It's going to have a bunch of web servers, which are in the middle. We're going to have a handful of databases, a handful of memcached boxes, and then all the services that we're going to call to get all that data I talked about. This will be in the slides for later. Okay, so the things I showed you, the kind of the live demo of eMusic, those pages, are actually WordPress pages. It's not a traditional WordPress page in the fact that you aren't going to go make a title, write a bunch of content, and then kind of use the content in your template. We think of WordPress really as kind of a toolkit, and for pages, really all it's doing for us is it's giving us the URL, and it's going to point us at our template in our theme. And for us, the theme is the website. We're never in a situation where we're changing around themes or really turning a bunch of plugins on and off. We're using what's in WordPress already, the template hierarchy and pages and stuff, but then we're doing a lot of our own code on top of it. So our home page, we're using the home.php template in your theme. And then for artist and album, the URLs start with /artist and /album. And then we use a little sugar with the rewrite API to actually put more data in the URL. So I don't know if you can see this as well, but artist will be eMusic.com /artist / the weekend, and then the weekend's artist ID. How many people are familiar with rewrite and Apache rewrite? Okay, so WordPress with your Apache kind of sends everything along to your code, and then WordPress itself will take that and say, okay, based on the information I have in the URL, I can actually take some values out of the URL and use it in my code. So it's kind of an internal redirect. Your server itself is not redirecting to some different page. Your server is saying, hey man, artist page with this stuff on it, do what you will. And so we take these URLs and we say, okay, the weekend part is really kind of an SEO thing, kind of a prettifying the URL. The IDs we're going to take and go, okay, this is the artist page I'm on. Somewhere in my code I'm going to make requests to services that are going to give me data based on that artist. Genre, which was the page that's similar to the home page, curated by editorial, is just a taxonomy. So just a tag is a taxonomy, genre is a taxonomy for us. So all these genres that we have in eMusic land are actually mapped to genres in WordPress. So when you go to emusic.com/music-genre/alternative-punk, we're going to go to our taxonomy-genre.php template. Search is actually pretty raw WordPress, you know, the s equals parameter. If any of your WordPress sites, if you do s equals and then write anything, it's going to go to your search template. It does for us too. So we use search.php for search. And then browse is probably the most complicated because we're doing all that data I said came from Elasticsearch. Elasticsearch is the enterprise tool we use to search our gigantic catalog. And in there, you'll see it starts with emusic.com/browse, and then each section of content in between the slashes is going to be parsed separately using some magic code in the background to make the request to Elasticsearch to say, okay, I searched for Aerosmith, give me back some data. And so what we saw too with search and browse is on the left, we had filters or refinements. Our URL is actually going to be browse/album/genre/artist ID/filters or refinements. I'm not going to show you the code because it might blow your mind. But it's just know that like this is some heavy duty stuff that's very possible in WordPress. And I'm not doing anything other than using the rewrite API. It's code that's already there. It's code that's documented on the codex. All right, so this we saw is a refresher. Search and browse built on top of Elasticsearch. And then the search on the right is a combination of searching for editorial through WordPress and searching multiple types in Elasticsearch, meaning if I search for Bon Jovi, I'll search artists, I'll search albums, I'll search tracks, etc. And this is the artist page, which we saw. It's Madonna looking good. Then we have, this is an album page. And this is actually one of the core experiences of our site. You know, right now, eMusic, and I should say I was a member of eMusic before I started working in eMusic. People would pay monthly, have an allotment of money to spend, and based on paying up front, we get a discount for downloads. So a core experience for us is downloads. So the album page, we actually support through JavaScript and through a bunch of WP Ajax actions, downloading. That's not a slide I have, but a big portion of our code base and a big portion of our plugins is actually packaging the code for a lot of the Ajax actions we do. Who's used WP Ajax in here? Not too many people. So WordPress has a dead simple way of writing PHP code and saying, hey, your JavaScript can be very simple. Who knows what Ajax is? Maybe half the room? Okay. Dynamic websites where you want to click a button or, you know, based on some action, just reload part of the content. That's Ajax. WordPress has a great abstraction for basically making Ajax requests with very little data and just saying, this is the name of my action. When this is called, call some PHP code. If you're interested in dynamic websites, definitely look at WP_Ajax. It's in the codex, and it's really the basis for a lot of the interaction on our website. Okay, and there's genre like we saw. Okay, so two new things that came, I guess, with WordPress 3.0. I could be wrong, I think it's 3.0. Were custom post types and custom taxonomies. Who knows what custom post types are? Good number of you. So basically, a post is a post type, a page is a post type, an attachment is a post type, a nav menu is a post type, a nav menu item is a post type. Custom post types are you making your own kind of custom content types and doing whatever you want with them. I think they were originally not for another kind of post, meaning it's not, you don't really want to use custom post types if you're going to use it to do posts that are just about food or something. That's what taxonomies are for. And we'll talk about taxonomies in a second. We use a ton of custom post types. We use 54 custom post types actually. And the original reason we started using a bunch of custom post types were that we had a bunch of different kinds of editorial, meaning that it wasn't just an album review. It was an album review, or it was a list, or it was what we call section types, meaning that we have a feature called 6 degrees, where I may want to have a picture, and then I want to write about maybe an artist. I may want to have a heading, then I want to associate an album with some text, then another heading, then another album and some text. Where it wasn't a post, and it wasn't in a review, and it wasn't a list, it was a new kind of thing. We had enough of those that we decided to say, hey, for each of those different kinds of articles, let's make a custom post type. That way, if I want to get all of the 6 degrees, I can do a post type archive. All that stuff's built into WordPress. So there is a little bit of code you have to use to register a post type, but once you do, and once you say, yes, this has an archive, you can give it its own pretty URL, it'll automatically have archives, and you get all the things you get with posts. Another thing we use them for are merchandising modules. If you remember on the sidebar, on a lot of the pages I showed you, those aren't posts. A lot of those are, here's the top 5 pieces of feature editorial, or here's a curated review, or here is coming soon, and there's 10 items. Those things, some can be auto-generated, some are actually programmed by editorial. And so a custom post type is perfect for that. If we need, take coming soon, if that's a thing, we want to have it on the home page and maybe a genre page, a custom post type is a good way to store that. We have something called house ads. House ads are what you think they are, except that we don't have external ads. We don't have Toyota ads on our site. We may decide to have an ad that upsells a member, or we have an ad that says, hey, new music coming soon, or check out our new app, or here's this feature. We also use custom post types for configs, meaning in one of our other environments, let's say our Android app. Let's say we want to control the image that shows up on the background of the home screen, or maybe the articles that are featured on the front page of the Android app. We program that stuff in WordPress and then find a way to push the content to the Android app. So WordPress is really our home base for all the administration on our site. And the home page itself contains many of these custom post types, and I will show you how. Okay. So if you remember seeing the home page, if I break down what's on the page, a lot of them are custom post types. So on the left side here, we look at our main merch module, which we call a stage. A stage is a custom post type. Each slide of that stage is something we call an actor. And so a stage actually contains actors. I can go in and say, all right, I have a big image, I have a button, here's where it links, here may be some analytics code, who knows. Here's an actor, use me wherever you want. When I create a stage, in my admin, I can select actors and what slot they go in. New and noteworthy. New and noteworthy for us is always on the homepage, and it's 18 albums that our editors have selected and curated for the spot. And I'll show you some screenshots of these tools in a second, but we have catalog data in one of those services that we need to bring onto the site. Our editors have 18 albums they want to feature on the homepage. They need an admin screen where they can come in, select the 18 albums, and they'll show up on the homepage. We decided to use a custom post type to store that data. We call it new and noteworthy. 17 dots is our editor's blog. We do use WordPress multi-site. Is everybody aware of WordPress multi-site? WordPress multi-site just means that I can have one WordPress install, but I can run my blog, your mom's blog, and your dad's blog all in the same code. We do that with 17 dots, which is our editor's blog. It's a little less formal than the actual site, a little less programmed and curated. It's more of news as it's happening. We have a Twitter feed in our sidebar. we actually made that a custom post type so that we can have somebody go in and say, okay, I'm going to edit the homepage Twitter and change where it pulls data from. Coming soon, like I said, is a custom post type. The recommendations we show on the homepage come from one of those data services. And then we have a couple others. We have a feature pack, which is something that we call, basically picking 5 pieces of editorial and saying, we're going to feature one, and then below it, we're going to have links to read more. We have something we call a double wide, and then we have a house ad, and then we have charts, which we get for our catalog service. So the reason I'm showing you this here is because, and it seems like a lot, and I realize it's a lot of stuff on the homepage. The cool thing about custom post types is that they get all the same things post-skip. And so when I'm selecting in my code, a custom post type to show on the homepage, I can select it, by category, by tag, by region, by any sort of custom taxonomy. And I'll get into that a little more when I have my slide on taxonomies. Okay, and then there's so many types of editorial to show you, but eventually it all drills down into we have archives and we have pieces of editorial. We also have ways of using categories to say, okay, I have articles about Bon Jovi and 5, we don't have articles about Bon Jovi and 5 post types, but if we did, you could use Bon Jovi as a category and it could pull from multiple post types into an archive. And yeah, so we have custom post types that work for sales or work for merch modules, but this is all, it's more of the vanilla WordPress stuff. We hook in, add our own data, add our own catalog data, but a lot of this stuff is WordPress, like you use WordPress. Okay. So taxonomy, like I said, is, a tag is a taxonomy, a category is a taxonomy. When you create custom taxonomies, you're kind of creating overarching groups for more data. So a big thing we have to do is regionalization. And on my blog, I have an entire post about this that tells you how to do just this one thing. But we have regional sites, meaning we have a US site, we have a Canada site, we have an EU site, we have a UK site. We know when you're coming into the website based on some headers from the web server, what country you're coming from. So we know which regional site to put you in, But based on that, our code then has to say, okay, I'm on the home page, but it's the US homepage. So if I'm going to show you new and noteworthy, I need to show you US new and noteworthy. If I'm in France, I'm going to show you EU's new and noteworthy. The way we do that is our custom post type for new and noteworthy has the region taxonomy. So when an editor is going to select these albums, they can also tick on and I'll show you a screenshot of this too, but they can select which region this goes in. They can also select what we call editorial target. So editorial target is going to say stuff like homepage, non-member homepage, browse, or they could select a genre. So like the homepage has new and noteworthy and the genre page has new and noteworthy, if the new and noteworthy I want to go in the genre page, if I select alternative punk as the genre in the admin, that's the one that'll show up on that page. If I select home as the editorial target for new and noteworthy, that's the one that's going to show up on the home page if it also has the region the user is supposed to go in. Am I losing anybody? Or okay. And we can do questions too. If everybody has a question, let me know. But I'm more of just trying to give you an overview of the WordPressy stuff we use, and it can get intense quickly. If I was going to show you the code for how this all works, it's actually using WordPress functions, but it's kind of using them to their limit. And is everybody aware of what WP query is? WP query is kind of like the bread and butter of selecting WordPress posts. WP query has a parameter called tax query. Tax query is how you go, give me some posts, but actually you need to do some stuff with taxonomies. That was actually some of the first patches I committed to WordPress core. were based on us using this and me going, here's a problem, this is broken or doesn't work. Yeah, and so then we use tag, and we actually have a page called topics. You can change the URL to not say tag, say whatever you want. And then category we use to group post types together. Okay.
Question.
Yep.
Do you know if 3.6 fixes the issue with the terms being like across multiple text times?
Okay, so this is the worst, and actually...
Could you repeat the question?
Okay, the question, I know the ticket, it's 5809. Actually, yeah, I fixed it. I've submitted the patch.
Yeah, do you know if it's going to be accepted in 3.6?
So there's a taxonomy roadmap, meaning that to fully fix it, it actually has to do, so some history here. If I create a category called Brooklyn, I create a tag called Brooklyn, and then I create a radio station called Brooklyn, right? I decide I want the radio station to be called Brooklyn's Finest. If I change it to Brooklyn's Finest, it'll change the tag category, okay? Which is ridiculous. And the problem is that when they originally created the term in taxonomy tables, it was very poorly done. It was based on how Drupal did it. And so your terms in multiple taxonomies are completely intermingled to where if you change one, it changes all of them. So the change I made was that when you do the radio station and you change it to Brooklyn's Finest, it makes a new term called Brooklyn's Finest, and then it's tied to that term, not the old one. That is supposedly on the roadmap, and there's also a database schema change which has to happen, basically an index on one of the columns. The problem with that is that WordPress.com has 30 million blogs. So when they make the schema change, they have to do it on 30 million tables, right? Because I was like, why don't you just do this now? It makes no sense. And we actually talked very seriously about doing it at the end of 3.5. I hope to God it happens. I have no excuse for it. I mean, it's
not your fault.
Yeah, no, it's basically awful. Okay, so taxonomies, put into action, merchandising. We're at the genre page. It's region specific, it's genre specific. On the browse page, it's region specific, it's target page specific, which means that my editorial target was browse, and then it can be genre specific too, meaning if I was just looking at alternative punk browse and I had a stage that was for the US for browse for alternative punk, it could change too. Okay. I won't go too much into this. I have a couple pictures. I can show you this. But basically, I was tasked. We used to use Dart to serve ads. But like I said, we don't have Toyota ads. We don't have Verizon ads. We have our own internal stuff. So it was kind of overkill for us to pay Dart. And so I really got tasked with, hey, replace Dart and no requirements. So I kind of started looking at how ads are served and came up with tools to allow someone who enters in some creative or multiple pieces of creative to basically say when this ad is supposed to show up based on the cookie, based on the URL, based on the query string. They can test multiple pieces of it, and they can actually pick a probability strategy to use for testing the ad. And that sounds way harder than it is. A lot of it comes down to like A/B testing. You show, two ads, take turns for a certain number of trials. Then based on the number of clicks, you can say, okay, well after 10,000 trials, just show this one. You can do strategies where show this one 30% of the time, and then when it starts winning, show it more. Or, so basically, there's a bunch of different ways you can optimize showing ads, and that's a lot of the code I wrote. So, here's a custom post type called house ad, and on the right you can see I have regions, and then I have what I call a house ad target, meaning on my page or in my template where I'm going to put my code, it may just be a div that has a class or a data target that's non-member stage, it's going to look and see based on these rules and strategies when to show it. This may be too complicated to even go into right now, but basically I can come in and say, okay, if the cookie is named this and has this value in it, and it's greater than or equal or less than, and it's also, this cookie is present with this value in it equal to whatever, that's when the ad is going to show. So this is some homegrown technology we've been using to show our internal ads. Custom post ad.
Scott,
Yep.
can you adjust for domestic regional?
What do you mean, like by country?
Like by IP region, New York
Well,
market, LA market?
So really, when I built it, because I had very few requirements, it was more on the traditional ways we segment our customers. And the number one way regionally we do it is by region or country. And so that's supported out of the box. And then theoretically, because region is a hierarchical taxonomy, you could go US, Utah, Salt Lake City, from there if you needed to. Yeah, not IP or anything though. Okay, so an example of house ads in action. If you come to our site with no cookies, you may get sent to our non-member homepage experience. Here's an example of it. There's a house ad resembling a stage. Here's a house ad on the right. And believe it or not, this legal text is a house ad that gets rendered, all this gets rendered with Ajax. So it'll make one request and say, these are the targets, here's some data, give me back the ads, and they'll get filled in. Up at the very top, you probably can't see, the slides will be online later, but that's all the code it takes to render a house ad, which is just an empty div. Okay, and like I said, web services are all over the place in our code, and they're just JSON, which is now kind of the standard format for reading data over the web. We also use a service to log users in, and actually our login in our user system is actually completely custom. WordPress is a very pluggable user system. If you have hundreds of thousands, over 1 million users, you're probably not going to use WordPress's built-in system. It doesn't scale it well for me. Okay, another part of our site is that we have a persistent player, meaning you can come to our website, not be a member, click on Justin Timberlake's album, and you can listen to 30-second song samples, and you can queue them up, you can have history, and so a challenge that gives us is that we can't do full page reloads while you're listening to the player, and so we don't do full page reloads at all. Our entire website is Ajax, and so that was a bunch of code I wrote. We've had that code for a while. We had some vendor code we were using that I didn't like, and so I ended up rewriting that in the past 6 months. But we have, basically, we have a persistent player at all times, and while you're listening to music, the entire site can load Ajax, and we're actually using the HTML5 history API, and so we can change the URL without having to use hash or hashbang, and then still load the content via Ajax. And for our player, we use local storage on your machine to store your playlist history. So you never have to log in, and we still have your queue from the last time you came to the site. Our player and a lot of the Ajax is written in Backbone. Anybody familiar with Backbone here? Yeah, Backbone is pretty awesome. If you haven't written a ton of JavaScript, it is not the first place to start. But if you know what you're doing, it's actually a pretty beautiful addition to the language. It sits on top of jQuery, and it uses underscore, which is by the same author. And it really kind of gives you a bunch of tools for advanced developers to do a few more elegant things with JavaScript. Okay, and like I said, we have our editor's blog, which is called 17 Dots. We make a lot of use of post formats there. When 3.6 comes out, I'm actually going to have to make, a lot of the stuff I was doing for 17 Dots is going to be in core, which is pretty cool, but I'm going to have to mess with 17 Dots a little bit. to make it not use all my code and use course code. Okay, and at the end, I just want to give you a few shots of our dashboard, meaning when our editors or anybody that's administering our site logs into our eMusic WP admin. Okay. Actually, I think the lights are in the front. To the right.
Because you worry.
Okay. Megan's here.
Ambiance.
Yeah. I've been messing with our site in WordPress for a couple years now, so I eventually was like, I'm going to mess with the dashboard and make this all of our stuff too. But we use New Relic, which is a monitoring tool. If you have a big website, work at a big company and have a bunch of servers, New Relic is really awesome. You can just go to their website and check out their tools. It's really cool. And we have a bunch of custom plugins we've made to manage our data. We can, we have artists that come from services, and those artists have artist IDs. We have images in our media library. We have a bunch of code we've written that will, when you go to an artist page, we've linked up images with artist IDs. So there's lots of content that's in WordPress, in our WordPress database, in our media library or posts, that are linked to external entities, an artist ID, an album ID, etc.
So that page of images wasn't necessarily from your media library, it was from another source?
Okay, so this picture of Lana Del Rey is in the media library.
It is.
But because I'm not afraid to make my own database tables, because we're not a traditional WordPress user. WordPress is a toolkit for us, and then we know SQL, we know how to manage those tables. So a lot of these are join tables.
Because when you were talking about 3.6 having better media management for audio and video,
Yeah.
I'm a photographer. When is the media library going to become something that's not a nightmare for me to manage tons of images specific to particular pages?
Yeah.
Because I see this and it's like, oh, wouldn't that be nice?
Well, I think the biggest issue, so his question was about, he's not a fan of managing tons of images in the media library now. And in WordPress 3.5, there was a completely new media manager. I think a lot of the features are driven by what 90% of people are going to do. And unless somebody has a great use case for where there are a lot of photographers actually that are on the core team and stuff. I'm surprised there aren't, people aren't more passionate about it. I think a lot of people have found plugins or they have other ways around it to where there's not this desperate need for new image stuff in core. Anything you want to suggest, any of the WordPress forums are on Track or anywhere. People are open to doing that stuff.
Even if you were just able to manage the folders of images in your media library.
Oh yeah.
Outside of the default month, year.
Oh yeah. No, it can, especially if you have a ton of images, it can be nightmarish. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Thanks. Sorry.
Yeah, man. Okay, and so then a lot of those modules, those merchandising modules, I need to schedule 18 albums. I need to have a list of 10 artists for coming soon. Here's a screenshot of some of the tools we have. And this is stuff I built where a lot of it's Ajax driven, so I can click add a catalog item, and then when I type the search, that uses jQuery autocomplete, goes to our services, and if I'm typing AC/DC, they should be at the top. When I click it, it'll put all their data in some hidden form fields, show the album cover, and we're on our way. This was stuff we built at the very beginning. When we first transitioned to WordPress, we were just doing editorial, and then 6 months later, we did kind of the rest of the pages. But these are tools we built first. We knew we needed to have an interface to get to our catalog. The catalog is really the basis for everything on our site. So we knew we needed to say, search by name or ID, album, artist, song, pick the country it's available in, and then search. That's another problem we have is that Carly Rae Jepsen's record might be in 19 countries, and they may be different albums on different labels with different IDs. this helps us sort through that by giving the editors the option up front to not say, just give me whatever Carly Rae Jepsen album you find. It's like, no, give it to me by ID or give it to me by country, and I'll sort through it for them. Okay. So I just wanted to share really quick, this is getting towards the end, is really in the past 6 months, we've really grown to adopt Backbone and Underscore, and also Less for CSS. Is anybody aware of Less? Yeah. Less is really cool, especially when you're working on teams and you want a unified way to do stuff. What will happen, because our PHP WordPress team is synonymous with our front-end team. You know, we have a whole bunch of Java engineers here who are doing a lot of the heavy-duty service stuff, but our WordPress and PHP team is the front-end team, so we do all the CSS, JavaScript, HTML as well. We had a new hire a few months ago, and he came in, his CSS was totally different, like not even remotely close. And you have a couple options there. You can force him to write in your way, or you can say, well, we'll let you write however you want and deal with it. I took a different approach and I said, we're going to use none of our styles, we're going to use less. And the ultimate goal we have when we write JavaScript and CSS, for anybody who follows Google Code or Google Speed, making your website faster, front-end improvements are the best way to make your website render faster. I mean, granted, if you have terrible back-end systems, there can be work done there. A lot of times, though, the most improvement you can get is optimizing your JavaScript and CSS. So our JavaScript and CSS ends up minified, meaning we take the raw code, it gets smashed together in the smallest form possible, and then even one level past that, we combine the files and then store them in fast memory so that when they're requested, it's the most optimized version of that code. The way we do this is using a tool called Node.js. Anybody aware of Node.js? We're getting into advanced topics here, and I apologize. But Node.js is an easy way to run some of these tools on your code. The websites are here. I'll publish these slides later too. But the workflow kind of goes something like this for anybody that this makes sense to. We take our basic files and we run them through these tools and we get minified files. And then when we go to production, the first time a bunch of files are requested, they get combined. And then we have crazy URLs like this, which is how we get those combined files. If you go to my blog and click WordPress, I write about all this stuff. It's way too obtuse to even get into right now. But
Well, you obviously recommend less over SAS.
you know what? It's whatever you want. I mean, I liked less. The website was pretty, and I started using it. I liked it, and then other people, after I'd already started using it, people started saying, "Why aren't you using SAS?" And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, there was no like real great reason to just use less. I like the idea of like object-oriented as much as possible, and even with CSS, you can reuse a lot of code if you use the tools that those languages provide. So I think using it at all is an advantage for anybody. Okay, cool, and that's the end of my slides. If anybody has questions about eMusic or WordPress in general, shoot. And actually, do we have a mic to, okay.
How do you serve data to Android app or iPhone app?
Okay, so one of the dirty secrets, I think, of WordPress is XMLRPC. And XMLRPC is a great way for WordPress developers to expose data. It's the worst way possible if you're an Android developer or an iPhone developer to consume data.
So you don't use anything like JSON API?
No, we should use that. But no, but really what happened was the first time we needed to get data out of WordPress, we used to be a WordPress VIP support customer, and like when we first switched to WordPress, our company was like, all right, we need to have this enterprise level support, and who knows what's going to happen. It was a new thing for us, so they sent us to training in San Francisco, and And I knew a lot of it, but my team, a lot of it was brand new to them. And so XMLRPC was kind of evangelized as like, oh, this is the way you do
Is
it.
that a service?
XMLRPC is a kind of a protocol. It's an envelope for saying, you send me a message and I send you data back. XML sucks, XMLRPC sucks worse. And so like, I can't advise people do that, but like it's a very easy way to get data out of WordPress because you're just writing simple PHP code and then WordPress already has core code that takes care of it for you. But in 2013, when you go to your iOS developer and you're like, we're going to use XMLRPC, it makes no sense, you know. But that's how we get stuff out
Do
now.
you recommend any JSON like plugins or?
Well, I actually just wrote a, so XMLRPC is in the root of your WordPress directory. I wrote something called JSON.php, which does all the same stuff, just does it as JSON, and it's backwards compatible with XMLRPC. Other than that, there are probably plugins I don't know about that are great. Yeah.
Thanks.
I know a lot of your images are coming from outside services. Are you using the CDN though for things in the library? Or
Good question. So, actually I should have talked about this too. When we first launched on our editorial stuff, like 3 days before we launched, one of our NAVs guys was like, hey, we're gonna have multiple servers, how do we keep the images in sync? And I at first was like, oh man, I didn't know what I was gonna do. So I had been using W3 Total Cache in the past, which is actually a pretty good plugin. It does a little too much for us, especially when it has code that interferes with some other similar plugins. But it has great CDN code, meaning that if you just upload images, it'll automatically put them in S3 or Microsoft Azure or whatever number of services. So I actually went into W3 Total Cache and ripped that code out and made it work so that we use just that portion and it uses just Amazon S3. And another problem we had was that we don't want to check a bunch of images into SVN or Git, right? So when you have years of posts and like thousands of album reviews and hundreds of pieces of editorial, you don't want to like every time somebody writes something have to check it into GitHub or have to like rsync to a bunch of servers. I made it work to where we always use rewrites for our images so that no one ever has to have images in their file directory when they're running WordPress for any of our content that's in the database. So for any of our editorial that's on production, if I have the same database as production but I have none of the images, all the images still work. What W3 Total Cache does, and a lot of other CDN plugins do, is they use an output buffer, meaning that as your page is getting generated, before it gets output, they take one last chance to go through the entire thing and change the image URLs to image URLs that point at S3. We go one step further and we use CloudFront. And so we have wp-images.eMusic.com, which sits in front of our S3. S3 does not have guaranteed speed and availability, but the CloudFront does. And so CloudFront's an Amazon service that sits in front of S3. And so the first time your image gets requested, it'll be cached in there, kind of as like a reverse proxy. So that's where our stuff goes. And then we have an internal image service that we use for catalog items, and the URLs are made by convention based on the like album ID or artist ID. So if I know your artist ID, I know how to create the URL for your image. And then we have a 404 handler, which is an image. So that if we have 100 albums on the page, we have no clue if we have the artwork for them. The URLs work, or they return the proper 404 image. And we have a CDN in front of it.
Images by category, by artist, by genre?
We have it by genre. It's kind of like very esoteric, but like part of the URL is a genre ID, so that if if The Weeknd doesn't have an image, he'll return his 404 for the genre sometimes.
Like your defaults.
Yeah. Yeah, but there's a bunch of different defaults based on what the URL was originally. Yeah.
Hey, I had a question about your rewrite structure. I was just wondering, I've thought about this before where you have, custom slugs for like your album. It's like album / artist name / the real album name. And maybe your ID on the end. Is the custom ID on the end is there like a performance boost there by having that?
No, I'll tell you what, I'll actually, if it's readily available to show you, I'll show you how that code works real quick. It's basically, your URL in WordPress is just a blob, right? And WordPress stacks up tons of rewrites to where if you have tons of custom post types and tons of custom taxonomies, you can end up with 1,000 rewrite rules. I did a bunch of stuff to get that number down. We actually made some changes in WordPress core to get it down. But it basically is just doing regex matching. So if you have a custom post type, it'll probably be, because basically when you add a new custom post type or you add a new custom taxonomy, it throws it at the top, right? But we have 54 custom post types, and there's like 4 or 8 rules for every post type. And so if you have 54, that can easily become 432 rules on top of the rules that are already there. But all it's going to do is just recurse through. It's going to recurse through all your rules, and when it matches the regex, it's going to stop. So let's go to rewrites. Okay. So, like this right here, these are just the rules for search, right? And then, okay, so like right here.
But I guess the question I have was, so with an album, you have the, like...
Okay, so like, here's all that's happening, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so right here, album or book, and then we're not gonna capture the next bit of gobbledygook, or the next one. We are gonna capture the ID, right? So all this is saying is that if the URL ends in album / slug / number,
Yep.
page name equals album or book, content ID equals the ID, okay?
Yeah.
And then the preg index, that'll just write and matches 0 or matches 1 for you, that kind of stuff. So all you're doing, this runs on generate rewrite rules, and I'm gonna put mine at the top. And I'm gonna say, no matter what happens below me, these are my rules. When they match, I want to set content ID so that in my code later on, I can do get query var content ID. Or in some class, I can set some property or something.
To expand on what Eric was asking, I think, do you use in the URL, like if you're on an artist page, would you want to use like the name of the artist? Like why use the ID instead of?
Oh no, so I do use the name.
Okay.
So let's real quick.
Because when I saw it in your samples, I thought you were just using IDs, and I didn't know like if.
How do I get out of full screen? I need somebody. Oh, here it is. Okay. So let's look at Radiohead. Radiohead is going to be eMusic.com /artist name run through sanitized title. It's the same every time. That way, no matter where I use it, it's going to be the same. /ID. If we do an album, we're going to do album /artist name run through sanitized title, album name run through sanitized title, ID. The artist slug and the album slug do nothing. They're just there for prettifying.
And the reason you're using the ID is in the URL is just so you can use it through query var, because some might say that.
So we needed, the reason we need it is because when this URL goes to page-artist.php, WordPress doesn't do anything, right? All WordPress does is say, okay, maybe I gave it a title for SEO, in the title tag in HTML or something. But WordPress isn't going to return me any data. All my data is going to be custom. The first thing I'm going to do is actually, since you guys are interested, let me show you real quick. We have an entire thing. So we have an entire request. We have an MU plugin called eMusic request. And so what this is going to do, okay, so for artist, if the page name is artist, which is what the rewrite showed us, right?
Yeah.
We're then going to do a switch on page name. When we hit artist, we're going to call a class called artist request. Okay? Artist request, we're going to pass the query bars to it. And the first thing we're going to do is say this artist ID equals vars content ID.
Okay, so that's why you're using it, so you can grab it out
Yeah.
and use it for other things.
And then you see right here, we're going to do get artist, this artist ID. It's going to return us a URL.
Your data.
Yeah, so like artist ID is how we get that artist content. Album ID, because like I said, Taylor Swift can have 25 versions of the same album, different album IDs. And so the album, based on ID, may have different tracks, different metadata.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Because I was wondering if you'd ever use it in a meta value, consider using just a meta value for that, and using like a meta query for that.
Well, no, the reason is because we don't store artists in WordPress. Artists are in service land, right? So most of our data, that's the funny thing, is like, we use WordPress pretty heavily, but none of the data is actually in WordPress. Editorial, yes. Album reviews, yes. When our editors assign reviews to any of their freelancers, they're going to put it in its whole workflow in WordPress. That's WordPress data. This other stuff, which is catalog data, which is the artist's name, when they were born, their genre, their albums, the tracks, those come from service land. Service land is where we get that data from.
Can you talk a little bit about your development versus production environment and like the editorial approval process for articles and the album reviews, things like that?
Well, so eMusic, as long as it has existed, has had an editorial team. So one of our editors was here earlier, Laura, and she's kind of like the production editor, which means that like we have some editors that will assign or copy edit or fact check. We have some that like deal with labels, and then Laura is kind of does a lot of the mechanical work, meaning that like we may be promoting a sale, we may be like promoting a label, and there may be a list of items that need to go into a merchandising module, or there may need to be we have things called hubs or collections, which are like a custom post type. They're a post, but they're for like sales or something, right? She'll enter that content. So really mainly, we have 3 main people who are on staff, which are like managing everything, but like there's been times we've had over 100 freelance writers at once. And so Laura, if it's a new writer, I actually have some code to create a byline author, meaning it's an author that's never going to log into our production environment, but they need to have a name in the drop-down so she can select that. We have a server that's just for WP admin. If you went to eMusic.com/WP admin, you would go to 404. Like, it doesn't exist on production. It does, but it doesn't. We have a lot of firewall rules, and we have rewrites just for that environment on the load balancer. We have a server that's only accessible over VPN, which is WP admin. And so, because we have a different server with a different name, which is where all production data is being entered, we actually have to filter a bunch of values, like home URL and site URL. And also, if we use switch to blog, we can filter that to make sure we're always in the current environment. On my blog, I have a post called WordPress in Dev, Stage, and Production. It's one of the first blog posts I ever did where I nerded out about WordPress. And it was kind of because, we were a VIP support customer. Most of the VIP customers are hosting, and they don't have a lot of these problems. They have a sandbox environment and they have a production, VIP environment. For us, we had to figure a lot of this about the hard way, to where it's like, oh, we have a problem, let's figure that out. And a lot of that fell to me. And so they asked me to help a client out and write up how I did that. And I'm like, well, if we both have this problem, other people are going to have this problem. So on that blog post, I kind of go through the whole thing. But the way we get around resolving URLs on my machine, on staging, on production, is we actually have files that sit on each machine that, if present, WordPress loads them and goes, oh, okay, this is my URL, this is my database, this is my domain.
Got it.
Yeah.
I have two questions actually. The first one, I was wondering about the slideshows on the homepage. I was wondering what the plugin name was for which you used for that. My second question was related to the themes. Do you create the theme yourself, or do you use a parent theme and then modify it? And related to the theme, is it responsive design? Meaning, can it match with laptops and mobile phones and other devices?
Responsive is on my short list to do better. That's the number one thing. We actually have a mobile site, which we thought was our solution to doing that, and then it's actually you have two themes to maintain, and it kind of sucks. But, and I'm a big fan of jQuery Mobile for, handhelds and iPads and all that. The slideshow is code I wrote. A lot of WordPress plugins have too much code, or don't do enough, or don't have enough places to hook in, to where in a lot of scenarios for me, it was just easier to write
I was wondering because I'm looking for something to use with slides. That's why I was wondering.
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of, I would look at Twitter Bootstrap. It may have an autoplay feature, and it's a pretty good out-of-the-box thing. Jetpack does as well. Jetpack has a lot more gallery options now.
There's a couple of responsive sliders that have just come out.
Yeah, and it's responsive too.
Yeah, that really work well.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at my code in a while, so I mean, it may suck. But, and then the theming, when I make sites, for instance, right now I'm working on a top secret music site for myself. That's kind of like my own blog. And I'm trying to figure out how to be a blogger because it's very hard to write continuously. I'm making a child theme of 2011. And it's like, it's the easiest way to get started. And I suggest child theming. If it's not something like huge like eMusic, like eMusic's never going to be a child theme of 2010 or something, you know. It's like, and the thing is too is like, a theme is like just the template hierarchy. You know, it's just coincidental that like a huge website is going to point at a theme, and what you're really getting is the template hierarchy. Meaning, if you have the files there, it'll load them based on what condition you're in. If it's a taxonomy, if it's a custom post type, you know, whatever. Anybody else?
This will be the last question. Last question.
Your work is amazing.
Thank you.
It's awesome. I have content in eMusic, and I want to take over control of my page, where the slider is, where my picture would go in my bio, the way you had the other. How do I get in?
Okay, so we'll make this quick. Let me just pull up the artist page real quick. Luckily, a lot of the content comes from the greater internet. So Radiohead right now doesn't even have YouTube showing up, probably because when we make the request to YouTube, it's probably a lot of cover songs or things that we can tell by analyzing it aren't really good videos to show. If you want to have YouTube videos on your page, just have YouTube videos to have your name in like the title somehow, right?
The banner.
The banner, those, believe it or not, are curated. We have a girl who's just a photo editor, and she's like done thousands of artists on here. Send me an email, maybe I'll help you out.
Thanks.
I mean, I wrote the tools. Because, you know, my band's on here. My band's called Goodbye Picasso. And I mean, I decked our page out. It's completely unnecessary inside. But, anyways, I'm going to hang around for a minute if anybody has more questions. But thanks for hanging out at eMusic.